Hey Lake Point, Pastor Michael here to get you caught up on the first week of our series, Parenting in the 21st Century. Parenting has always been challenging, but navigating the complexities of the 21st century has probably made parenting more challenging now than ever. Kids are growing up in a world very different than the world you and I grew up in. Culture and technology have dramatically shifted our perspective and approach to life, including how we parent. Our hope is that this series will provide all of us, parents and grandparents, aunts and uncles, teachers and educators, youth workers and sports coaches, an opportunity to pause and consider the best way we can make a difference in the next generation. According to Leonard Sachs, who's a family physician with a PhD in psychology, parents are spending more and more time and money on parenting, but when you look at the results, things are getting worse, not better. American kids are now much more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD or bipolar disorder or other psychiatric disorders than they were 25 years ago. They are heavier and less fit than they were 25 years ago, and long-term outcome studies suggest that American kids are now less resilient and more fragile than they used to be. Now, here's the rub. Before you start knocking this generation, we need to take a long look in the mirror, because today's young people are products of a world that we've created for them. Over the past 3 decades, there's been a massive transfer of authority in our culture from parents to kids, in which we now prioritize and value the opinions and preferences of our children. In many families, what kids think and what kids like and what kids want now matters as much or more than what their parents think and like and want. Let kids decide has become the mantra of good parenting. However, as Pastor Nate shared, the role of a parent is to instruct and train the next generation, and that requires authority. It requires asserting authority over a child. Now, what does it mean to assert authority as a parent? Most people interpret it as meaning being a tough disciplinarian. They equate authority to enforcing discipline. But it is so much bigger than that. When we talk about parental authority, we're talking about parents ensuring that they have a strong voice into their kids' lives, that their words have weight, and that their words take precedence over the other voices in their kids' lives. For most of human history, this is the way it has been. It's only in the last few decades that peer-based relationships have displaced parents as the authority in a kid's life. Margaret Mead, she writes, "Our students now live in a culture where all learning is horizontal and little or no learning comes from an older, wiser generation." Dr. Gordon Neufeld, a Canadian psychologist, cites that many of the problems we see with North American kids today, the defiance, the disrespect, the disconnection from the real world, can be traced to the lack of a strong attachment between parents and their kids. He argues that for kids and teens to thrive, they need an older, wiser generation speaking into their lives. They need authoritative parents who are actively guiding their kids. One of the more serious consequences of modern day parenting is that parents no longer provide their kids with big picture perspective on life. We live in a society where we believe the right thing to do is to let our kids decide the answers to the big questions in life, from sexuality to spirituality and everything in between. We do this because we think it's somehow supporting and serving the next generation, but it's not. The wisdom of Scripture actually teaches the opposite. 21st century parents do a big disservice to their kids by saying your identity, your purpose, it's yours to discover. Go out in life and find it. As Nate shared, God in his compassion and wisdom predetermined these things for us. Dr. Kara Powell is a researcher and professor at Fuller Theological Seminary, and she says that every young person is asking the same 3 big questions in life. Who am I? Which is an issue of identity, our view of ourselves. Where do I fit? Which is an issue of belonging and our connection with other people. And what difference can I make? Which is an issue of purpose, our contribution to the world. But here's the thing, our identity, belonging, and purpose are not meant to be things we spend our lives searching for. That would be futile and cruel and mean. No, God designed for these things to be given to us by Him, and the earlier the better, because they are meant to be the foundation upon which our lives are built. This is why parental authority matters so much, because we have the big answers to life. Who am I? I'm a child of God. Where do I fit? I belong in God's family. What difference can I make? Well, I'm invited into God's story. It's why we have ancient Jewish proverbs in Scripture, like Proverbs 22, verse 6, that says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." Now, remember, Proverbs are principles, not promises. They don't always come true. They're simply generally true. And so with that in mind, 3,000 years later, what does modern day research say about this problem? Well, the research would say the following, that you should train up a child in the way he should go, and when he grows up and moves away, you will have improved the odds. Seriously, there are no guarantees in life, but the research strongly suggests that if you instill godly values into your kids' lives, there's a much higher chance that they will do well in life. One of the most destructive things parents can say is this: I don't want to impose my beliefs upon my child. Here's the reality: if you don't, somebody else will. Culture is discipling your kid every day, all day. If your voice doesn't have more weight than their peers and media, then your kids will take their cues from culture. Well, friends, thank you for listening. Enjoy jumping into discussion questions. I'll see you next week.